Mick Jagger has redefined the image of a rock star with his swagger and energy for over 60 years ruling the stage. From the Rolling Stones' rough beginnings to their sold-out concerts throughout the world, Jagger's impact is felt far and wide. A complicated existence characterized by renown, extravagance, personal traumas, and remarkable perseverance lurks beneath the defiant persona and spectacular performances. His life is an emotional roller coaster filled with both public and private challenges. Are you prepared to uncover Mick Jagger's hidden history? No one was born a rock star. Mick Jagger was one. Dartford, a small town in Kent, was his birthplace. His mother was a hairdresser with a strong affinity for conservative views, and his father was a gymnastics instructor who inculcated a passion for athletics. However, it was in the church choir and on the crackling radio that little Mick discovered his voice, as he listened to blues greats while staring at the fading TV screen. Meeting Keith Richards in elementary school in 1950 was a watershed moment. Their connection was instantaneous, yet their lives took different turns, as they so frequently do. Mick Jagger studied hard for the 11+ exams and got into Dartford Grammar School after the Jaggers relocated to Wilmington in 1954. Still, the allure of music remained constant, even while I did my best at school. He and his friend Dick Taylor formed a garage band when they were teenagers. Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, and other raw electric musicians' sounds were embraced by them. Platform 2 of Dartford Railway Station was the site of a fateful event in 1961. A fortuitous meeting with Richards ignited a spark of awareness when Jagger's records by Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters were played. Reignited the fire of love they had for the blues. They had a new musical partnership. The residence of Mick Jagger became a musical mecca for Richards and Taylor, who frequently crashed there. The Blues Boys were able to solidify their quintet with the arrival of Alan Etherington and Bob Beckwith. Jagger dropped out of school in 1961 despite having passed 7 O-levels and 2 A-levels. Forming a bohemian trio, he, Richards, and guitarist Brian Jones all rented an apartment in Chelsea. Pragmatist Jagger kept his options open as Jones and Richards concentrated on forming their rhythm and blues band. He dabbled with media and politics while attending the esteemed London School of Economics on a full scholarship from the government. After Brian Jones began performing with Blues Incorporated under the alias Elmo Lewis, things took a swift turn. Blues Incorporated, fronted by Alexis Corner, drew Jagger, Richards, and Jones, who Jagger succeeded as the band's magnetic lead singer. Also, the three of them worked tirelessly on their own, planting the seeds that would eventually grow into the legendary Rolling Stones. The world of music will never be the same as Mick Jagger's life was about to erupt. In the beginning, the Rolling Stones had a lot of trouble. They played in a basement club across from the Ealing Broadway tube station in London for free, barely scraping by. Their inaugural performance, which they called the Rolling Stones, took place on July 12, 1962, at the Marquise Club, a jazz club in London with very little gear and borrowed instruments. The band formally became known as the Rolling Stones not long after. The fundamental members of the band were changing. With Jagger, Richards, Jones, and Ian Stewart on piano, Dick Taylor on bass, and Tony Chapman and briefly Mick Avery on drums, the lineup was completed. A stay at the Eel Pie Island Hotel in 1963 was the gig that the BBC said helped launch their career. A crucial choice was made by Jagger that autumn. He decided to follow his passion for music full-time, so he dropped out of the London School of Economics. At first, the group's sound was defined by its covers of American rhythm and blues music from artists like Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry. In fact, they used cover versions of songs to get their first 2 UK #1 hits. However, a shift was on the way. The band became a target due to their rejection of societal conventions, and 1967 was a turbulent turning point in their career. Were targeted during a heavily reported cocaine raid at Keith Richards' rural residence. Charges were brought against Jagger and Richards as a result of the finding of illicit substances. Although they were found guilty, their penalties were later reversed throughout the appeals process. However, issues with the law were far from resolved. After officials searched Jagger's London house 2 years later, he was once again facing arrest for narcotics possession. Conflicts in the courts weren't the only obstacles the band faced. Brian Jones, one of the Stones' original members, left the band in June 1969. A visa for the band's forthcoming U.S. tour was denied to him due to his increasing drug usage and legal difficulties. Tragic events occurred less than 30 days afterwards. A lifeless body was discovered in Jones's swimming pool. The official cause of his death was a fatal combination of drugs and alcohol. The Stones, however, devastated by the defeat, continued onward. They performed a huge tribute concert in Hyde Park, London, only 2 days after that. Their initial intention was to present Mick Taylor, a new guitarist, but the solemn event took precedence. With heavy heart, Jagger paid tribute to their late bandmate by reading passages from Percy Shelley's poem Adin Eyes. A symbolic farewell was marked by the releasing of hundreds of white butterflies, and they sang a song that was particularly dear to Jones. The shadows of the year would continue. Tragically, their music and unification celebration at Altamont Speedway went horribly wrong. Altamont was a dreary, lonely, and tense landscape far from the blissful Woodstock-style event they had imagined. There was an air of impending doom the instant the band showed up. Punches to the face were delivered to Jagger without delay, beginning the day with an aggressive tone. Although they were recruited to keep the peace, the Hells Angels turned out to be more of a threat. The aggressiveness of the crowd was intensified by their overbearing methods. There was a noticeable rise in the level of violence and the likelihood of death as the other bands hit the stage, adding to the already tense environment. The audience had been somewhat rowdy by the time the Rolling Stones' performance commenced. While the Hells Angels hammered out punishments with brutality, perhaps sensing the mounting threat, Jagger seemed subdued on stage. Everyone was hoping he could use his magnetic stage presence to diffuse the mounting tensions, but he was unable. Things took a turn for the worst when they were performing Under My Thumb. A Hells Angel brutally murdered him with a knife, and the shocked band watched in horror as the horrific crime unfolded. The documentary Gimme Shelter preserved that terrifying moment forever. At the end of the day, 4 lives were lost at Altamont, including Hunter's, and that day will be forever marred. For the counterculture movement of the 1960s, this tragedy was the tragic end of an optimistic era. As Jagger considered the tragedy, he was struck by the brutality. It was horrible. The crucifixion of Jesus Christ would have taken place had he been present. It was the beginning of a dark and uncertain era for the Rolling Stones. Tragically, one of the audience members was murdered by the Hells Angels during the violent incident, which made Jagger reconsider his ties to the notorious motorcycle group. However, there was a cost to his decision to cut relations. Some Hells Angels were so outraged by the rejection that they arranged Mick Jagger's murder as a terrifying act of vengeance. In their well-plotted operation, they intended to sneak up on Jagger's Long Island vacation house undetected. Their plan all along was to sneak into the home via the beachside garden, which was mostly unattended. Nevertheless, luck was not on their bend. Fortunately, their murderous scheme was foiled by an unexpected and intense storm. Though they managed to survive, the would-be killers were rendered mute by the terrifying trauma they endured at the hands of the violent waves. Jagger, who had been miraculously saved from certain death, was completely unaware of the assassination attempt. The terrifying plot was unknown until 2008, after decades of waiting. An FBI agent revealed the attempted assassination plot in a shocking revelation on a British television series. You can almost feel the shock and relief on Jagger's face as he read about the imminent peril he had narrowly avoided in the newspapers. Even though they were going through some rough patches, the Rolling Stones made a triumphant return in the 70s. Their place in rock history was cemented by albums such as Sticky Fingers and the highly acclaimed Exile on Main Street. Their fame was undiminished even when guitarist Mick Taylor left in 1975 and was replaced by the brilliant Ronnie Wood. However, an internal power struggle was taking shape. A schism developed between Jagger and Richards due to Jagger's aspirations for a solo career. Jagger took charge of the band's direction while Richards spiraled into addiction. By the mid-1980s, their formerly strong relationship had begun to weaken, and a public feud had broken out. Surprising everyone, the Rolling Stones reunited in 1988, prepared for a successful new chapter. Even though it seemed like their demise was inevitable, no one could deny the band's comeback. Their 1989 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was a reflection of their lasting impact. A huge international tour followed the release of their most successful record in a long time. A new generation was connecting with their music, and they began to get several plaudits. The retirement of Bill Wyman as Stone's bassist in 1992 appeared to be yet another possible setback. However, Darryl Jones filled in without a hitch, maintaining the rhythm section's tightness. They had financial and critical success with 1994's Voodoo Lounge. Not only did it win them their first Grammy for Best Rock Album, but the music video for Love Is Strong also took home a Grammy. Additional landmarks and accomplishments occurred in the 2000s. While not quite as groundbreaking as their earlier works, Bridges to Babylon and A Bigger Bang were nevertheless critically acclaimed albums. Then, in 2006, they lived up to their reputation as a defiant group with a performance that created Super Bowl history. With his dazzling presence, Jagger was able to push the boundaries. The 2016 Stones concert in Havana, Cuba was a turning point. They performed for 500,000 people in a nation that had previously seen their music as revolutionary. The historic performance, which came soon after President Obama's visit, showcased the band's worldwide cultural influence. Their blues-influenced album Blue and Lonesome was out the same year. 2018 saw them pay homage to their heritage while also taking home another Grammy. Despite the suspension of Jagger's 2019 tour due to heart surgery, the Rolling Stones showed no signs of slowing down. The rock gods were destined to captivate audiences for generations to come with their unparalleled stage presence and lasting impact. Even though Jagger's heart surgery in 2019 delayed the tour, it was evident that the Rolling Stones weren't slowing down. Because of their legendary status and unparalleled live performance, the rock gods were sure to keep fans enthralled for decades to come. Not even the Rolling Stones could contain Jagger's boundless energy. While maintaining his responsibilities to the Rolling Stones, he began a solo career in the mid-1980s. He achieved commercial success with his debut solo album, She's the Boss, which went platinum, but his subsequent album, Primitive Cool, was not nearly as successful. Despite this setback, Jagger continued to create solo albums. In 1993, she dropped Wandering Spirit. A collaboration with Lenny Kravitz was included, even though it was met with mixed reviews. However, Jagger's solo career took off after his 1985 street dancing duet with David Bowie. The song soared to #1 in the UK and made it into the US top 10. There was more to Jagger's abilities than just music. He tried his hand at acting during the band's heyday, appearing in films including Performance and Ned Kelly. Even though Jagger's early forays into filmmaking were unsuccessful, she did make a triumphant comeback to the medium decades later, this time in a different role. His producing credits include works such as the Women and James Brown's biopic Get On Up. However, Jagger's 2003 acceptance of a knighthood was arguably the most unexpected turn in his career. The once arrested anti-establishment rebel, now known as Sir Michael Jagger, was feted by Prince. However, there was a covert animosity between the recipient of this esteemed distinction and the current monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. Rumor has it that Jagger had the Queen's disapproval, considering him to be an extremely unqualified knight. His affiliation with her sister Princess Margaret and what she saw as his disrespect for the monarchy were two of the main reasons for her displeasure. Even Prime Minister Tony Blair was unsuccessful in his repeated attempts to have Jagger added to the esteemed honors list by the Queen. The fact that Jagger was anti-establishment didn't assist his cause in the least. He was rather outspoken about his desire for anarchy and even went so far as to call Elizabeth the chief witch. Jagger was knighted by Prince Charles in the end, which may have been the result of a stroke of luck or a strategically placed royal absence. It would appear that Queen Elizabeth's scheduled knee operation happened to fall on the exact same day. The rumor mill has it that she went so far as to say that attending a particular function at Buckingham Palace was more important than being in the hospital. Despite her initial reluctance, Queen Elizabeth II was compelled to acknowledge Sir Mick Jagger's formidable presence in the royal court. Although Jagger's public persona as a rock star could lead one to believe otherwise, his private life is characterized by serious relationships and a big family. He has 9 grandchildren and great-grandchildren from his 1 marriage and 8 children from 5 other mothers. He dated Cleo Sylvester for the first time seriously. After a turbulent and consequential relationship with singer Mary Ann Faithfull, he dated Chrissy Shrimpton in the early 1960s. Faithfull was a key figure in London's music scene. A profound and often turbulent affinity defined their relationship, which was defined by a mutual love of music. Even the legendary song Sister Morphine was written and performed by both of them. However, drug abuse and infidelity marred their relationship. Later, Faithfull admitted that her magnetic stage persona was a facade hiding her profound fears. She said that she frequently used drugs and drink to get through sexual encounters with Jagger. Keith Richards, a bandmate who was still hurting from Jagger's affair with Anita Pallenberg, cheated on him with her at some point. It was a cruel turn of events that made their animosity even stronger. The devastating loss of Faithfull's unborn child in 1968 was the final straw that broke the camel's back of their relationship. A harsh light was cast on Jagger's reputation by Faithfull's honest revelations, which came years later. Richards then made derogatory remarks about Jagger's manhood, which almost caused Faithfull to respond in a mysterious way. Married to Jagger in 1969 was Marcia Hunt. He had his first kid, Carrie Hunt Jagger, as a result of a short but significant connection with her. It is commonly thought that Hunt was the mastermind behind the famous Brown Sugar. They tied the knot in 1971 after Jagger met Bianca Perez Mora Macias in 1970. In that same year, their daughter Jade came into this world. Sadly, they divorced in 1978 after only a brief marriage. Having an affair with model Bebe Buell while married led Jagger to falsely assume paternity of her daughter Liv Tyler. Jagger started dating model Jerry Hall seriously in 1977. They wed in a small ceremony in 1990 and welcomed Gabrielle, Georgia May, Elizabeth, and James into the world. Their relationship ended due to Jagger's adultery, which included an affair with Carla Bruni. Despite their strong affinity, it was later determined that the marriage to Hall was null and void. Jagger's life was greatly improved by the security and support he received from his relationship with Lauren Scott, which began in 2001. Over the course of more than a decade, the celebrated fashion designer provided solace and joy. Unfortunately, Scott's untimely suicide in 2014 ended their joy. It was difficult for Jagger to come to terms with her untimely demise, which crushed him. Jagger tried to celebrate Scott's life despite her overwhelming sadness. He made it possible for aspiring designers of the future to attend Central St. Martin's College, a famous institution in London, by establishing a scholarship in her honor. It was the hope of those who organized this memorial service that Lauren Scott's remarkable skill would take center stage, rather than her untimely death or her romance with a rock and roll legend. After his father Joe passed away in 2006, Jagger suffered a great personal loss. Even though their lives couldn't have been more different, Joe was more than simply a father figure to me. As a result of his influence, Jagger became the rock star that she is today. When Joe heard his son had a talent for music, he supported him and even paid for his first band. The indefatigable work ethic that would become Jagger's thunderous stage presence was something he inculcated. Joe's influence was palpable in Jagger's unique characteristics, his striking appearance, and his energetic stage presence. On one occasion, they even appeared together on a sports program airing on BBC, sharing the spotlight. The news of his father's death hit him harder because of the close relationship they shared. Jagger got the terrible news only hours before the Rolling Stones were supposed to play a concert in Sin City. He made the astounding professional decision to keep the concert going. Jagger stepped onto the platform well aware that his father would have preferred it that way. He had an unusual level of gregariousness. At the legendary New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, the Rolling Stones recently performed, but it was more than simply a concert. A sudden political shift occurred. Frontman Mick Jagger wasted little time criticizing newly elected Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry during their performance. What a heartwarming gathering, isn't it? To the raging crowd, Jagger posed the question. In his pursuit of social homogeneity, he is attempting to regress humanity to its most primitive state. Always one for a clever comeback, Landry tweeted a classic Rolling Stones song title in a fun manner. Not everything you desire can be obtained. He went so far as to provide a cordial Louisiana welcome to the rock star and poke fun at the idea that Jagger could be the only person alive today who can remember the Stone Age. The lively conversation exemplifies Jagger's unwavering courage to express his political beliefs, even in the middle of a joyous musical performance. However, there will be no slowdown from the Rolling Stones. The 24th Stones tour features Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ronnie Wood. In a recent Instagram video, Jagger shows off his guitar skills, proving that he is still a formidable performer at the age of 80. The tour begins in Houston in 2024 and guarantees North American audiences amazing shows.